Well, hello, management. 561, Team 3, and Professor Hanshaw. I'm Rob Alexander, and I will be kicking off a class divided assignment with questions 1 and 2. And then Ryan, Natalie, and Christian will answer the remaining questions about a class divided. So, my first question was, how does the film A Class Divided speak to diversity perspectives? Well, I took each word and kind of made it my own, took my own definition for what I felt diversity and perspectives is. So, diversity is a dynamic word clearly meaning differing and different, a word that we use to note the individual and what he and she offers to a group or class setting. In any group setting or environment, it does not matter if you are pink or blue, tall or short, all that matters is what you bring to the table. Our book talks about diversity of skills on page 151 and looking for complementarity. It says that a team requires complementarity, not identical skills. So we're looking for that individual goal from each person, what they bring to the table. Perspective falls in the category of the state of one's ideas or the facts known to one person. Everyone brings a shared experience, as the group is about individuals who have something specific in common, but also their own individual take on that experience. Every person, even participating in the same activity, will relay the facts and the impact of that activity on themselves differently. I believe this was the big lesson learned in Miss Elliott's third grade class. At the end of the experiment, the kids all realized that they brought something special to any situation, regardless of color. And me, for myself, even, I went to grade school from 1983 to 1989 in southeast Indiana, and we never had any diversity experiments like this. And I could have easily been a very racist person. There were only white students and teachers in my school from K through 12, and I went to the same school for all my grades, K through 12, and my graduating class was only 34 people. My hometown was only like 800 people, so I'm almost like that Iowa case study that we're talking about. So, and then how were stereotypes introduced by Miss Elliott, and why do you suppose they were effective? Well, on the first day of the experiment, stereotypes were introduced by Miss Elliott, telling the class that blue-eyed people are better than brown-eyed people. The students were told this by an authoritative figure who is their teacher, Miss Elliott. And then Miss Elliott continued to downplay the brown-eyed people on the first day by saying they were slower, dumber, and the worst listeners. And the blue-eyed kids just loved that because they thought they were invincible. So, and the brown-eyed kids were basically being segregated from classroom activities. So, recess, couldn't drink from the water fountain, had to drink out of cups. So it really demeaned them, and then the roles were reversed the next day, and I think that my other teammates will go a little more into detail on that. So thank you very much, and that is the answers to my first two questions, or to our first two questions. Have a great day.
Hello, so today I will be discussing questions 3 and 4. Question 3 asks, using theory, how did Eliot design clear roles? Why do you suppose the students went along with it? So, to teach the children a lesson about discrimination, Eliot divided the students into two groups, those who had blue eyes and those with brown. On day 1, Eliot designated those with blue eyes to be the ones superior to those with brown eyes. Eliot pushed the idea that those with blue eyes were smarter, less violent, and better than the brown-eyed people. Due to her conversation with the students, she started teaching narrative based on eye color to get the students in a discriminative frame of mind. To add another layer to designated roles, Eliot explained that blue-eyed students will have additional recess time, and that the brown-eyed students cannot play with the blue-eyed students, they cannot use the drinking fountain, and would have to wear a collar to add an additional visual distinguishment. These verbal and visual cues made it clear to all students who the superior group was and how to identify those who were not. I believe that the students went along with the experiment because of multiple reasons. One, as a third grader, it might have seemed fun. Initially, it might have seemed fun to have an upper hand on the other students and potentially see it as some sort of game. Also, who was going to question Miss Elliott? As a third grade student, the students potentially felt that orders from an authoritative leader such as Miss Elliott could not be questioned and needed to be obeyed. Although it's evident that not all students agreed to the narrative that Miss Elliott taught them, they still conformed to the rules of discrimination. The students were conforming to groupthink because they knew what was right but followed through with what was wrong because the rest of the group was doing it. Rather than standing up and objecting to the experiment, the kids followed through simply because the perceived notion was that the majority were okay with doing it, especially coming from those who were blue-eyed on day one because of the additional benefits they received. Now in question 4, it asks, what was it like to be a blue-eyed student on day 1, and in what ways was it different in day 2? How did things change once the kids' roles were switched? On day 1, blue-eyed students were on top as they had additional privileges. As they felt superior to their brown-eyed fellow students, many of them started verbally attacking the brown-eyed students, making them feel less valuable. On day 2, Miss Elliott switched the narrative by telling the students that she lied to them and that actually brown-eyed students were better than the blue-eyed students. Interesting fact was that Miss Elliott conducted additional analysis to see how students learn due to their perceived ability. For example, she practiced phonics cards with the brown-eyed students on day 1, and it took them 5.5 minutes to complete them. On day 2, those same brown-eyed students completed the cards in 2.5 minutes. The opposite occurred for the blue-eyed students, as they did better on day 1 versus the second day. The conclusion of that small exercise showed that the students did better on the day when they were assigned to be the superior group, and that the superior mentality affected the way students participated and learned. As the roles switched, the brown-eyed students were eager to switch roles, and it was obvious that the blue-eyed students were not excited. I find it interesting that depending on the day that their group was superior, both groups of students were eager to be superior to their classmates, no matter how much they knew discriminating against the other was not okay. Role switching allowed all the students to experience discrimination so they could have a personal experience that would teach them about the evils of it. Thank you.
Hi, I'll be covering questions 5 and 6 for A Class Divided for Team 3. Number 5 is using the 4 dimensions of empowerment. Examine and describe the process Elliott used to structure team empowerment. The 4 dimensions of empowerment are group potency, meaningfulness, autonomy, and impact. Group potency is the shared belief among the team members that they can be effective. Elliott set clear instructions and assigned roles and rules in order to create the group potency. Meaningfulness is the team's perception that tasks are important, valuable, and worthwhile. Elliott provided encouragement to the dominant eye color in order to give them the meaningfulness for this experiment. Autonomy is the degree to which the team members experience substantial freedom. Elliott provided this by giving the group their roles and allowing them to continue with their roles without interfering. And the last is impact. Impact is significance given to the team by those on the outside. As we saw by others' reaction to the group in the film was that they were greatly impacted by the group based on the child punching the other child and people getting upset. You could clearly see the impact that the dominant eye color groups had. Elliot provided the empowerment to the group by giving her clear instructions and rules regarding their dominance, as well as using the inferior eye color group as an example of what not to do. By empowering the dominant group, Elliot created a very effective team for this experiment. Question number 6 is using theory and concepts. Describe how group identity was created by Elliot. Group identity for the children for the experiment was, of course, the eye color, the blue and the brown eye color, and then the neck collar. So to bind the group members together and to establish the group identity, the neck collars were placed on the inferior eye color, and this was a solidarity symbol, unifying the group non-verbally. So each group was given their role and rules, and they're able to act on it by visually identifying the other group member or their own group members, whether they had a collar or not, and by their eye color. The groups are identified in the experiment basically with just visual indicators. It had nothing to do with obviously the types of people they were. It was just clearly by eye color, and that was it, and everything else was false information. Thank you.
And I will be covering questions 7 and 8. Question number 7. How is the lesson from this experiment valid today? The lesson from the experiment is valid today as we can see Black Lives Matter movement. And social media, we see many Black Lives Matter movement being interrupted by White Lives Matters. I truly get the point in the BLM when it comes to profiling. I grew up in East LA and the profiling is high. Many times coming out of school, I will be pulled over because the police thought that I was part of a gang. I think the lesson from the experiments can show white lives and Black lives that all lives matter. The lesson in the film shows that all humans matter. Question number 8. How do you believe this film and the experiments will change your perspective and attitude towards diversity? What are the 3 key takeaways from A Class Divided? I joined the U.S. Army at 19 years old. Before the Army, I never socialized with any other race besides Hispanic. I grew up in East LA where the majority of the people are Hispanic. My perspective of Black and whites were different from what I got to know in the Army. The Army showed me that we are all humans regardless of your background. The film and the experience have shown me that I have learned well with diversity. As I saw diversity in the Army show me that we are all the same. We all bleed red regardless of the color of your skin. My 3 takeaways from the film A Class Divided are: 1. If it can be learned, it can be unlearned. 2. There is one race, and that is the human race. 3. As leaders, we need to mirror Jane Elliott and teach people about diversity.